Twin flame, listen to this carefully. This journey was never meant to be easy, and it was never meant for everyone. If you're here, it's not because you were lucky. It's because you were strong enough to be chosen. The universe does not give twin flames to souls who want love. It gives them to souls who can survive truth. This connection is not designed to comfort you. It's designed to break illusions, to dismantle emotional dependency, to expose where you abandon yourself, and to rebuild you from the inside out. That's why this path feels heavier than normal relationships. That's why separation hurts deeper. That's why silence cuts sharper. And that's why walking away is never as simple as it seems. Twin flame, weak attachment cannot survive this journey. Fantasy collapses here. Ego-based love dissolves here. Only what is real remains. You weren't given this connection because you were ready for romance. You were given it because you were capable of transformation under pressure. The divine masculine is tested through loss of control. The divine feminine is tested through loss of illusion. Both are stripped of who they thought they were, so they can become who they truly are. If this journey has ever made you feel broken, exhausted, or completely redefined, that's not failure, that's initiation. Because twin flames are not assigned to comfort souls. They are assigned to the strongest ones. So if you've been asking, why me? Why does this feel so intense? Why can't I go back to who I was before? Stay with me, because once you understand why the universe chose you for this journey, you'll stop seeing it as suffering and start seeing it as proof of your strength. Twin flame, this connection is not something you stumble into, and it's not something you manifest by wanting it badly enough. Twin flames are assigned by a level of intelligence in the universe that does not respond to desire, fantasy, or emotional need. It responds to capacity to withstand pressure, capacity to remain conscious under emotional intensity, capacity to be dismantled without losing the core of who you are. This is the first truth most people resist on this journey. Normal relationships are chosen. They form through compatibility, attraction, shared values, timing, and mutual effort. Twin flames operate under a completely different mechanism. They are not drawn together because they fit. They are brought together because they trigger transformation. That's why the connection often arrives unexpectedly, at inconvenient times, in impossible circumstances, with dynamics that feel destabilizing rather than comforting. The universe does not ask if your life is ready. It asks if you are. Twin flame energy is surgical. It goes straight to the places where identity is fragile, where attachment is rooted in fear, and where love has been confused with validation. It exposes patterns you didn't know you were living by. It removes emotional anesthesia. It forces awareness. This is why not everyone is given this journey. Many souls want intensity. Many want spiritual romance. Many want unconditional love. But very few can endure unconditional truth. The twin flame bond does not support emotional dependency. It does not reward avoidance. It does not protect comfort zones. It removes everything that is built on illusion, even if that illusion once felt like love. That's why the strongest souls are chosen, not the happiest, not the most healed, but the ones who can survive disintegration without becoming bitter, cruel, or disconnected from themselves. Twin flame assignment is about nervous system resilience. When the connection activates, it compresses growth into a short span of time. Emotional lessons that would normally unfold over decades are forced into months or years. This creates intensity, confusion, and pain, but also rapid awakening. The universe does not give this acceleration to souls who would collapse under it. This is also why the journey feels isolating. Few people can understand it. Advice from normal relationship frameworks fails here. Logic breaks down. Spiritual bypassing stops working. What remains is raw self-confrontation. The assignment is simple but brutal. Learn to love without losing yourself. Learn to stand in truth without control. Learn to choose integrity over attachment. And until those lessons integrate, the connection will not stabilize. This is where many misunderstand the purpose. They believe the twin flame is the reward. It's not. The self that emerges through the journey is the reward. Union is not the goal at the beginning. Strength is. This is why separation is common, why silence happens, why roles like runner and chaser appear. These are not flaws in the system. They are pressure points designed to reveal where power is being outsourced instead of embodied. Twin flame assignment does not guarantee union. It guarantees initiation. Only when the soul becomes self-sovereign, no longer chasing, no longer waiting, no longer defining worth through the connection, does the universe allow the energy to resolve into form, and that resolution may be union or complete release. Both outcomes require strength. So if this journey has ever made you question yourself, your patterns, your attachments, or your identity, that's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign the assignment is working. Twin flame, You were not given this path because you needed someone. You were given this path because you were capable of becoming someone stronger. Twin flame. This is where many souls misunderstand why this journey breaks them instead of fulfilling them. Wanting love is not strength. Longing is not readiness, and intensity is not capacity. Most people believe that because they desire connection deeply, they are prepared to receive it. But the twin flame path operates on an entirely different metric. The universe does not measure how much you want love. It measures how well you can hold yourself when love removes everything familiar. Desire is emotional. Strength is structural. Desire says, I feel deeply. Strength says, I remain whole even when everything inside me is shaken. This is why so many people encounter a twin flame and collapse into anxiety, obsession, confusion, or self-abandonment. The connection exposes gaps in inner stability that desire alone cannot fill. Wanting union does not mean you can survive the dismantling required to reach it. Twin flame energy amplifies attachment patterns instantly. If love has been tied to validation, reassurance, or emotional regulation, those dependencies surface immediately. The bond presses directly on unresolved wounds, abandonment, rejection, control, worthiness, without cushioning. This is where desire fails, because desire seeks relief, and the twin flame journey removes relief. Strength, on the other hand, is the ability to stay present when relief is not available. It is the capacity to face emotional discomfort without outsourcing regulation to another person. It is the willingness to choose integrity even when longing screams louder than logic. The universe does not reward desire on this path. It tests containment. Can you feel deeply without acting compulsively? Can you love without chasing? Can you detach without collapsing? Can you sit in uncertainty without betraying yourself? These questions define readiness far more than passion ever could. This is also why separation becomes inevitable when desire outweighs strength. When one or both souls are driven primarily by emotional need, the field destabilizes. The connection becomes overwhelming rather than grounding. Intensity spikes, but coherence disappears. Separation is not punishment here, it is correction. The universe removes proximity so the soul can develop strength without leaning on the bond for regulation. It forces the individual to build inner stability instead of emotional dependence. And until that happens, closeness would only reinforce distortion. This is especially visible in the runner-chaser dynamic. The chaser is often rich in desire, but still learning strength. the runner avoids because they lack emotional containment altogether. Both are confronted with the same lesson from opposite ends. Desire without self-sovereignty leads to collapse. Strength does not mean emotional numbness. It does not mean detachment from feeling. It means the ability to experience emotion without being controlled by it. It means choosing clarity over comfort. It means refusing to abandon self-respect for connection. This is why many twin flames experience a turning point where desire burns out. They stop wanting union the way they used to. Not because love disappeared, but because the soul matured. Desire gives way to discernment. Fantasy dissolves into truth. And that is when the energy begins to stabilize. Twin flame. Union does not respond to how badly you want it. It responds to who you have become in its absence. The universe waits until longing no longer dictates behavior, until love no longer overrides boundaries, until strength replaces emotional urgency. Only then can connection exist without distortion. This is why wanting love is never enough on this path. Wanting is passive. Strength is embodied. Wanting seeks fulfillment from the outside. Strength generates stability from within. And the twin flame journey does not move forward until the soul proves it can stand on its own. If this path has forced you to let go of desperation, fantasy, or emotional dependence, it wasn't cruelty, it was preparation. Because only strength can hold what desire alone would destroy. Twin flame. This is the part of the journey no one prepares you for, because it doesn't feel spiritual while it's happening. It feels personal, it feels unfair, and it feels like loss. But what you experience here is not destruction, it is initiation. The twin flame journey does not build on top of who you already are. It dismantles who you thought you had to be in order to survive. Every coping mechanism, every identity built around attachment, every version of love rooted in fear is brought to the surface and stripped away. This is why the connection breaks you before it builds you. The universe cannot construct something true on a foundation made of illusion. And most souls arrive at this journey carrying unexamined beliefs about love. That love requires sacrifice, endurance, silence, self-erasure, or waiting. The twin flame bond confronts those beliefs directly and collapses them through experience, not explanation. You are not broken because you are weak. You are broken because something false is being removed. Initiation always involves loss of identity. The version of you that believed love meant holding on at any cost cannot survive here. The version of you that found meaning through being chosen, needed, or validated must dissolve. And this dissolution feels like grief, confusion, and emptiness. This is where many misinterpret what's happening. They think the pain means the connection is wrong. They think the suffering means they failed. They think the breakdown means they are losing something valuable. But initiation pain does not come from losing the twin flame. It comes from losing the self that depended on the twin flame. The universe applies pressure until the soul releases what it cannot carry forward. And pressure is applied precisely because the soul can withstand it. Souls that would fracture permanently are never brought this far. The journey intensifies only when the system is capable of integration. This is why everything seems to fall apart at once. Relationships, identity, purpose, emotional stability, all are shaken simultaneously. The connection destabilizes the entire internal structure, not just romantic attachment. Because the goal is not to improve one area of life, but to reorganize the self at its core. The breaking phase forces confrontation with truth, where love became a coping strategy, where connection replaced self-worth, where longing replaced direction. These patterns cannot coexist with sovereignty, and sovereignty is required for any real resolution on this path. This is also why reassurance disappears here. Signs fade. Synchronicities lose their comforting edge. External validation stops working. The universe removes crutches so the soul can stand unsupported. This stage feels lonely, not because you are abandoned, but because dependency is being withdrawn. The soul is learning how to be present with itself without escape. That is initiation. Only after this break does rebuilding begin. And rebuilding is quiet. It doesn't look like instant union. It doesn't look like emotional highs. It looks like boundaries forming naturally, like nervous system regulation returning, like peace becoming more valuable than intensity. The new self that emerges does not chase answers. It does not negotiate truth. It does not wait in suspension. It moves forward with or without the connection, because its stability no longer depends on outcome. This is why many twin flames feel changed forever after this stage. Not hardened, not closed, but grounded. Less reactive, less willing to betray themselves for love. The universe breaks what cannot accompany you into the next phase. And it does so because it sees what you can become once the excess is removed. Initiation is not the end of the journey. It is the threshold. Those who resist the breaking loop endlessly in pain. those who surrender to it cross into strength. And only strength can hold what comes next, whether that is union, release, or an entirely new chapter of selfhood. Twin flame, you were not broken to be abandoned. You were broken to be rebuilt in truth. Twin flame, separation is often where the illusion finally collapses. Most people are taught that distance means failure, that if love is real, it should be easy to stay together. That separation proves something went wrong. But on the twin flame path, separation is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence that the connection has moved beyond fantasy and into truth. Separation exists because power cannot be built in proximity when attachment is still active. When two souls are emotionally fused, the nervous system seeks regulation through the bond. Feelings rise and fall based on contact, silence, reassurance, or withdrawal. In that state, growth stalls. The self becomes secondary to the connection, and the universe does not allow power to be outsourced. So separation creates space, not to punish, but to restore sovereignty. In distance, the soul is forced to encounter itself without distraction. There is no one to regulate emotion, no one to project onto, no one to negotiate truth with. What remains is raw inner reality, and that reality must be faced without anesthetic. This is why separation feels destabilizing at first. The emotional body has lost its reference point. The identity that organized itself around the connection begins to unravel. Anxiety, grief, longing, anger, and confusion surface, not because separation causes them, but because proximity had been suppressing them. Power begins exactly there. Power is not control over the connection. Power is self-regulation in its absence. This stage teaches the soul how to remain intact without emotional supply, how to process longing without acting on it, how to feel love without using it as an excuse to abandon boundaries, how to choose self-respect even when the heart aches. This is why separation often lasts longer than expected. Strength cannot be rushed. The nervous system needs time to rewire. Patterns built over lifetimes do not dissolve overnight. The universe waits until the soul can stand without leaning. For the divine feminine, separation often builds power through self-return. She stops scanning the connection for a movement, stops reading signs as instruction, stops pausing life in anticipation. Her energy, once directed outward, turns inward and stabilizes. For the divine masculine, separation often builds power through discomfort. Without access to the feminine's regulating presence, his avoidance no longer works. Emotions surface without containment. The body demands integration. What was suppressed becomes unavoidable. Both are strengthened, not by reunion, but by individuation. This is where many misunderstand and sabotage the process. They try to shorten separation through contact, reassurance, or explanation. But premature closeness collapses the structure being built. It returns the system to dependency, not alignment. True power does not seek to end separation. It uses separation to end distortion. This is also why, when reunion happens after this phase, it feels different, less charged, less urgent, less intoxicating. The bond no longer carries the weight of regulation. Two whole systems meet instead of two fragmented ones, clinging for stability. And if reunion does not happen, the power remains. That is the part most people don't expect. They assume strength only matters if it leads back to the connection. But the universe builds power for the soul, not for the relationship. The relationship is secondary to evolution. Separation builds the kind of strength that cannot be taken away. The ability to love without losing center. The ability to walk forward without resentment. The ability to release without collapse. Weakness clings to proximity. Power survives distance. Twin flame separation is not the absence of love. It is the training ground where love is purified of dependency. And once that purification is complete, the connection can only move forward in one of two ways: as a grounded union or as a clean release. Both require strength, both are valid, and both are impossible without separation doing its work. Twin flame. This journey does not test both souls in the same way. It tests them complementarily. The universe applies pressure where each polarity is weakest, not where it is strongest. That is why the divine masculine and divine feminine experience the path so differently, and why misunderstanding between them is so common. The divine feminine is tested through overextension. She is asked to confront where love became sacrifice, where intuition turned into endurance, and where patience became self-erasure. Her challenge is not to love more, but to stop loving at the cost of herself. From the beginning, the feminine often feels the bond more consciously. She senses depth, purpose, and potential. But this awareness becomes a test. Can she hold truth without turning it into responsibility? Can she recognize connection without carrying it alone? The universe pressures her by withholding reciprocity. Silence, distance, and emotional ambiguity expose how much of her energy has been flowing outward. The test is brutal but precise. Will she continue to regulate the connection through hope and availability, or will she reclaim her center? Her strength is forged when she chooses self-alignment over longing, when she stops waiting, not in anger, but in clarity, when love no longer requires her to stay suspended. The divine masculine is tested through avoidance. He is confronted with everything he learned to suppress in order to function: emotion, vulnerability, uncertainty, and loss of control. His challenge is not to feel more, but to stop running from what he already feels. The masculine often experiences the bond somatically before emotionally. Pressure shows up as restlessness, dissatisfaction, irritability, or internal collapse rather than conscious longing. The universe tests him by removing escape routes. Distraction stops working. Distance no longer brings relief. The silence he once used as protection becomes suffocating. His strength is forged when he faces emotional truth without retreat, when he stops compartmentalizing connection, when he accepts responsibility for his inner world instead of outsourcing it to circumstance. Neither path is easier, both are necessary. The feminine learns sovereignty by withdrawing energy. The masculine learns sovereignty by staying present. And the imbalance between them is intentional. If both were tested the same way, the system would not evolve. One must learn to stop giving, the other must learn to stop avoiding. The pressure continues until both reach self-responsibility. This is also why timing rarely aligns early on. The feminine often completes her lesson first. She stabilizes, detaches, and reclaims her life. The masculine often lags behind, not because he cares less, but because his lesson requires confrontation with internal chaos he spent a lifetime avoiding. This delay is not favoritism, it is design. The journey only resolves when both polarities can meet in self-contained strength. When neither needs the other to regulate emotion, define worth, or maintain identity. Until then, proximity would only recreate imbalance. This stage often brings frustration. The feminine may feel unseen. The masculine may feel pressured. Both may feel misunderstood, but the misunderstanding is not personal. It is structural. Each is being trained in a different muscle. The universe does not ask the feminine to chase awareness into the masculine. It does not ask the masculine to perform vulnerability for reassurance. It asks both to become whole. Only then can the connection exist without distortion. Only then can union be sustainable, and only then can release be peaceful. Twin flame, this journey tests you where you are unfinished, not to punish you, but to complete you. Twin flame, this journey exposes attachment the way pressure exposes cracks in a structure. What cannot support weight collapses, not because it is wrong, but because it is insufficient for what is being built. Weak attachment patterns are not immoral or shameful. They are common. They develop as survival strategies, staying close to feel safe, overgiving to avoid abandonment, withdrawing to avoid vulnerability, controlling outcomes to manage anxiety. In normal relationships, these patterns often persist for years, sometimes for a lifetime, without being fully challenged. The twin flame path does not allow that. This connection amplifies attachment instantly. Whatever strategy you use to feel secure becomes visible, active, and unsustainable. The bond removes buffering. There is no slow adjustment period. There is no emotional padding. The system goes straight to the fault line. That is why people experience obsession, anxiety, avoidance, and emotional volatility so quickly here, not because the connection is unhealthy, but because it refuses to carry unresolved attachment forward. Weak attachment collapses because it relies on the other person to regulate the self. The twin flame bond removes that external regulation. Contact is inconsistent. Communication is unpredictable. Presence is unstable. And without steady reassurance, attachment strategies fail. The soul is forced to confront what it was using the connection to avoid feeling. This is especially destabilizing for anxious attachment. The need for closeness, confirmation, and certainty intensifies, but the bond does not respond by providing them. Instead, it withdraws, not to punish, but to reveal dependency. For avoidant attachment, the collapse happens differently. Distance initially feels relieving. Silence feels safe. But over time, the emotional backlog accumulates. What was pushed away resurfaces through the body. Tension, restlessness, dissatisfaction, or sudden emotional flooding. Avoidance stops working because the connection remains active internally. Both styles fail for the same reason. They outsource safety. The twin flame path does not support outsourcing. The universe is not interested in managing your emotions for you. It is interested in teaching you how to hold them without distortion. Weak attachment collapses because it cannot coexist with sovereignty. This is also why so many people mistake collapse for loss. They think they are losing the connection when, in reality, they are losing the mechanism they used to interact with it. The bond does not disappear. The illusion of control does. As attachment collapses, there is often a period of emotional freefall. The nervous system no longer knows how to orient itself. Old coping strategies no longer work. The soul feels exposed. This is the most misunderstood phase because it feels like failure. But collapse is not failure here. It is recalibration. The system is learning a new baseline, one where safety comes from presence, not proximity, where worth is internal, not mirrored, where love is not used to soothe fear. Strong attachment does not cling. Strong attachment does not control. Strong attachment does not disappear under pressure. It remains steady because it is rooted in self-trust. This is why the journey demands the collapse of weak patterns before any resolution can occur. Union built on anxious pursuit or avoidant withdrawal would reproduce pain. Release driven by fear would carry regret. The universe clears distortion before allowing outcome. As weak attachment dissolves, something unexpected happens. The emotional charge decreases. Thoughts slow, the need to analyze fades. The connection stops consuming attention, not because it mattered less, but because the self became stable. This is the point where many twin flames feel strangely calm for the first time. The bond no longer hijacks the nervous system. It exists without urgency, and from that stability, clarity emerges naturally. Only then can the timeline move forward cleanly. Weak attachment collapses because it cannot survive truth. Strong attachment transforms because it is aligned with it. Twin flame, if this path stripped you of coping mechanisms you once relied on, it wasn't cruelty, it was refinement. The journey removes what cannot hold the weight of real love. And what remains after collapse is not emptiness, it is capacity. Twin flame, this is the moment where strength stops being something you survive and becomes something you live from. Until now, strength may have looked like endurance, like holding on through confusion, like staying conscious while the connection destabilized everything familiar. But self-sovereignty is not endurance. It is internal authority. It is the point where your inner state is no longer governed by external movement, silence, or possibility. Self-sovereignty begins quietly. There is no announcement, no dramatic realization, no emotional climax. There is simply a shift. The connection no longer dictates your nervous system. Silence does not collapse you. Contact does not intoxicate you. Distance does not provoke anxiety. You still feel, but you are no longer ruled by feeling. This is where the twin flame journey fundamentally changes. Before sovereignty, the mind circles endlessly. What does this mean? What is happening? When will this resolve? Why is this so hard? After sovereignty, the questions dissolve. They are replaced by clarity. What am I available for now? What aligns with my truth? What am I no longer willing to carry? This shift is irreversible because it is structural, not emotional. The soul stops organizing life around potential. It stops pausing joy, direction, and identity until the connection makes sense. Waiting loses its logic, not because hope disappeared, but because self-respect matured. This is why many twin flames experience a sudden return of energy here. Motivation stabilizes, focus return. Life feels grounded again, not euphoric, coherent. The self is no longer fragmented by anticipation. Self-sovereignty does not mean emotional shutdown. Love may still exist. Care may still be present. Memory may still surface. But none of it overrides boundaries. None of it demands sacrifice. None of it negotiates dignity. This is where fear loses leverage. Fear once said, "If I let go, I lose everything. If I stop waiting, I betray the connection. If I choose myself, love ends." Sovereignty answers quietly. If I abandon myself, nothing is worth keeping. If love is real, it will meet me in truth. If it doesn't, it cannot follow me forward. This is the threshold where the universe responds. If both souls reach sovereignty, union becomes possible, not as intensity, but as stability. Two autonomous systems meet without need, without pressure, without emotional bargaining. There is no chase, no avoidance, no proving, just grounded presence. If only one soul reaches sovereignty, release unfolds naturally, not dramatically, not painfully, not as rejection. The attachment dissolves because it is no longer fed. The connection moves out of the foreground of life and into integration. Gratitude replaces longing. Clarity replaces confusion. Both outcomes represent completion. This is why sovereignty is not a test of love. It is a test of alignment. Love that requires self-abandonment cannot exist here. Love that survives only through hope cannot cross this threshold. Only what meets you in reality remains. This is also where the journey truly ends, even if the story continues. The soul no longer seeks closure externally. It generates closure internally. The loop of analysis, interpretation, and emotional negotiation stops. Strength becomes quiet here. No urgency, no collapse, no obsession, just self-possession. Twin flame. Self-sovereignty is the moment you reclaim authorship of your life. The journey no longer defines you. The connection no longer governs you. You move forward intact, whether together or alone. You are no longer proving strength. You are no longer surviving transformation. You are living from truth. Twin flame. This is where the journey reveals its final truth. Not everyone who meets a twin flame reaches union, and not everyone who reaches release fails. Only the strongest souls reach resolution. This is the part that contradicts fantasy, because many believe strength is proven, enduring pain longer, waiting harder, or loving without limits. But the universe does not measure strength by suffering. It measures it by integration. Union and true release require the same thing: a self that no longer needs the connection to be whole. This is why so many souls get close, but do not cross this threshold. They awaken, they feel the bond, they experience intensity, they survive separation. But when the moment comes to stand fully in self-sovereignty, they hesitate, because sovereignty removes excuses. It removes victimhood. It removes the narrative that someone else holds your future. Only strong souls can live without emotional guarantees. Union is not withheld because love is missing. It is withheld because dependency still exists. The universe will not bind two souls together if either still use the bond to regulate fear, identity, or worth. That would create attachment, not union. True union only occurs when neither soul needs it to survive, and that is rare. For those who reach this stage, aligned on both sides, union feels almost anticlimactic. There is no dramatic confession, no intoxicating rush, no emotional chaos. The connection stabilizes because there is nothing left to prove. Love moves from intensity into consistency. Presence replaces longing. Reality replaces fantasy. This is why many miss it when it happens. They expect fireworks, but what arrives is peace. For those where alignment does not meet, release occurs. And this is where strength is most misunderstood. Release is not giving up. Release is not losing. Release is not rejection. Release is resolution without attachment. It happens when the soul no longer negotiates with potential, when it stops asking what if and begins living what is. The connection loosens naturally because it is no longer being fed by longing, fear, or unfinished identity. Strong souls do not need dramatic endings. They do not need explanations to move forward. They do not need to close doors loudly. The attachment dissolves because its function is complete. This is why weak souls fear release more than pain. Pain keeps the bond alive. Release ends the emotional loop, and only strength can tolerate finality without resentment. The universe does not favor union over release. It favors completion. Both outcomes free energy. Both restore direction. Both return power to the self. This is the final test of the twin flame journey. Can you stand in truth even if the story does not match your desire? Those who can complete the path. Those who cannot repeat it, not necessarily with the same soul, but with the same lesson in different forms until strength is embodied. This is why twin flames are given only to the strongest souls. Not because they are superior, but because they are capable of finishing what others would abandon halfway through. Finishing does not mean staying. Finishing means no longer needing. Twin flame, if you have reached this point where union would be welcomed but not required, and release would be accepted without collapse, then the journey has done its work. Whatever remains now is real. Whatever leaves now is complete. And whatever comes next will meet you in strength, not longing. This is not the end of love. It is the end of distortion. And only the strongest souls are willing to let distortion die, even when it once felt like everything.